And here we are. Isn't it June already? We're halfway through the year. How did we get here? I have absolutely no idea. Time just seems to go the way it does. Sometimes it goes fast, sometimes it goes slow. Einstein had something to say about that. Then he was walking down a different path and being led by a different idea. And that's going to be the subject tonight. Who's leading who? Are we leading ourselves? Do we know we can lead ourselves? And where are we leading ourselves to if that is the case or not? So, we may be joined later by a couple of people because they're a little bit on retard. So, Angela, do you want to start off?
Sure, I'm Angela Daye from Inner Pathways, and I love working with clients who are not feeling at their best. And the best thing we do is get them from feeling that kind of meh, yuck, up to okay. And then if they really want to get there, we then work towards awesome. And I use kinesiology, hypnotherapy, and coaching to do that.
Mary.
Mary Corbett of Mary Corbett Coaching, and I am based over in the wonderful Green Isle of Ireland. However, I actually work with people in Ireland and the UK, mainly, and occasionally the US. What do I do? Who do I coach? I coach people who are, generally speaking, busy. Usually they have leadership roles, and they mightn't be quite thriving. So we help them to identify their inner leader and be their best selves and perform at their best. That's it.
Willie.
Hi there, I'm Willie Nicol, the cop-turned coach. Willie Nicol Coaching is my business. I help men who find themselves lost or stuck or overwhelmed to get their lives back on track and rediscover their mojo using my 90-day life change program. So if you know any men who are stressed, anxious, overwhelmed, or whatever, please send them my details. Thank you.
I'm sure there's a lot of them around, to tell you the truth. I think I'm living with one. Anyhow, I'm Leslie Marsh, and I am all about the culture of nurture, not only in businesses, but also in yourself. Because if you're not nurturing yourself, then basically, things will be growing in your own little culture. And that's not going to be a good thing. But that's also leads us on to what we're talking about. We were just, as we do, having a little conversation before we started to record. And Mary, you were saying something about just realising that you had become a leader, like it became a surprise.
Yeah, I suppose a lot of it comes from, I think of big famous political leaders or famous, media leaders, the famous sports leaders on the sports pitch, the captain of the team. And I never had any sense of myself as I was leading. I was just doing the day job. I was a project manager at one stage of my life. So very definitely I was leading, but my sense of myself was that I was just getting the projects in. I didn't see it as leadership at that time. I would now, absolutely. And I recognize I was leading. So I was kind of an unconscious leader, if the truth be told. And my sense is, because I do, in addition to working with managers, I also work with people currently who have been made redundant. And it's interesting that many of them, the word leadership comes in quite rarely, but they're more caught up with doing the day job. And I find it quite fascinating. Sorry, my battery is going to die, so I do apologize. Now, so my sense is that people don't think about it. They don't reflect on, am I a leader, very often. And I think if they did, then they might get more wiser as to, well, how are they leading themselves or are they being led? And there may be space for both.
Yeah, that comes into a little thing that you wrote on LinkedIn the other day there about self-awareness. Because, being self-aware of your own leadership qualities could be a good thing.
Absolutely. I think that self-awareness is a very underrated trait, ability, skill. Sometimes we don't even know, we're not aware of the idea of self-awareness, which leaves us in a kind of dark place. When I was a line manager in the police service, you were a manager. So I had officers whom I managed. But when I look back at it, a bit like Mary's saying there, I was actually also leading them, hopefully by example. And that didn't occur to me at the time either until it was pointed out to me later. So I think in many respects, we're all leaders. And the first and foremost is, are we leading ourselves? And are we leading ourselves in the right direction, in the most effective way, but most importantly, in the way that sits best with us? Because if we're not doing that, again, we could end up in a dark place. So maybe an idea to sit down, become self-aware, and say, where am I leading myself?
And if we don't know the answer to that question, we can always ask Angela.
Up the garden path normally.
Oh,
Yeah,
I love a garden path.
not in this weather. No, so it's an interesting one because actually I've been a leader since I was 18 because I took on a youth leadership role and I was running summer camps and weekends away and youth clubs from the age of 18 onwards. And I still do that to a certain extent, different youth organisation now, but I am still taking on a leadership role with under 18s. And I think it's an interesting one because I was in leadership positions in work life as well, but I was a different person. I didn't embody the leadership qualities that I did in my voluntary life in the workplace when it came to working with adults. So it's a really interesting kind of dichotomy perhaps of well, do you actually realize that the skills that you've got and you're using in this aspect of your life actually do transfer across all aspects of life? And sometimes we live our lives in a bit of a silo. So work Angela is different to youth work Angela is different to hobbies or college courses or whatever else I'm doing Angela. And it's that piece of where do I want to be? What do I want to be using? And have I got more skills than I'm actually giving myself credit for and utilizing?
Just as you were saying that, I was thinking about the title of this one, Who's Leading Who? And that could be which aspect of it is actually taking the vanguard point at the time that we're in the space. And it's very much a case of perhaps it's because we're used to being follower in one position. And then we allow that to happen. We allow someone else to lead us to a certain extent in one direction. And then something happens, doesn't it? We get a little bit of that, I think I could do that better, or I think I could do that differently. And that's the little
Or
voice.
why on earth am I even trying to do this?
Yes, that's a good one. I've done that quite a lot in my life. Why am I here? Oh yeah, right. So it comes down to that self-awareness thing again, of being aware in each moment who we are being and why. How does it serve us to be following instead of leading? How does it serve us to lead instead of follow? What do you think, Nick? Willie?
I think it depends, that old answer, right?
A favorite word.
It depends in context, right? We probably feel comfortable leading in an area or a context where we're comfortable. I know what I'm doing here. I've done this before. All what's okay. And I'm quite confident leading in this certain environment. In areas where we're not comfortable, that becomes more problematic. And we look maybe to others to take the lead because they are more, I don't know, competent, skilled, knowledgeable, or whatever it is. I guess my role in the police was that very often I had to be a leader, inverted commas, because someone had to take charge. When everyone's running about like headless chickens and you know what's hitting the fan, someone's got to stand up, and inevitably they turn to the guy in the uniform and say, okay, big guy, what are you going to do about it? And they become an inadvertent leader. And that kind of sticks with you. But I do believe that it's easier to be a leader in areas of life where you're more comfortable or you feel more comfortable. But that's not to say, for example, that you can't become a leader in other areas if you study, work, train, whatever it is.
I think on that
there's
one as
another
well, it comes back to your self-awareness part as well, Willie. There's a lot of people who are put into leadership roles that are not right for the role. They're not ready for the role. And in some cases, if they're not self-aware, they might not realize that they're not ready for that leadership position or aspect to themselves. And I guess it's that point of taking that moment, whichever position you're in, to pause and say, am I right for this? Do I need support on this? And if I need support, then there's lots of people you can go to, like Mary was talking about earlier, and actually working out what makes sense and not just saying, oh, well, so-and-so told me I can do it, so I'm good.
But I think there's another piece to the puzzle, and that is that sometimes, particularly, and I'm going to refer mainly to work situations where somebody's appointed as a manager, and what they're aware of is the tasks that they've seen other managers do, which is quite separate from the leadership that they do while doing those tasks. And I think to what you're saying, Angela, that awareness that it's not just the task, there's an internalized piece about leading and being aware and sensitive to the bigger picture and thinking about the situation and the broader sphere that isn't highlighted. So because all they see are the concrete tasks that other managers have done, they may not actually have visibility or awareness of the leadership piece. They have visibility of the management piece.
Very much like it's an iceberg. You see,
Yep.
you see that thing on the top, but you don't know what's going on underneath, what it takes to support what's going on underneath, and what kind of volume is involved. Some people make it look really easy to be managers. Some people make it look really good because actually they can delegate. They're not controlling everything all the time, trying to keep everything in one place. And the idea of being a manager as well is that you're going to be able to cope with everybody else's mood swings, ideas, situations that they will bring into work with them anyway. But you have to kind of shuffle around and deal with that as well, which is another part of the iceberg that we don't actually see. So that's kind of where we come in as well, isn't it?
You could say that the managers manage and leaders lead, which is very simplistic. But management to me is more, as Mary said, task orientated. There is a piece of work to be done. I can manage that, right? To me, the manager is the he or she who can get the tasks done, the jobs done. The leader, on the other hand, maybe sits at a level above that, maybe in a more strategic capacity, who provides his or her vision about how these tasks should go to a particular conclusion, and then delegates the management of said tasks to the managers. So the kind of, what they call it, the helicopter approach. So that here's where we're going, Mr. Manager, what the tasks required to get there. And the manager does that, he or she does that, and then we get to where we want to be. Hopefully.
The landing and the taking off part that's kind of difficult, isn't it? Oh, you're up in the air, everything's fine.
It is really interesting that, it's that internal, external piece, that thinking that goes on. Because when we even look at the language that's used in various sectors, they still, you'll still have people who have supervisory roles, people who have management roles, people who have leadership roles, and then you've some of the bigger organizations who actually are gradually beginning to really stress that everybody needs to lead themselves and collaborate and be their own leader and take their own responsibility. So that it depends on, I think, for a lot of people, where they end up working, whether that push to get them to think about self-reflection, self-awareness, leadership, the person they want to emulate, who they want to be like, the behaviors and the ideas that they want to emulate. I think it's so varied across different organizations that us coaches are going to be busy for a long time to come. I don't think AI is going to deal with this one in a hurry.
And interesting you say it's different styles across different organizations. You've then got the different styles across the same organization. And it could be
That's true.
one manager with 5 other managers underneath them, and each one of them might be taking a different approach. Never mind other departments, depending on the size of the organization. So I think it's one of those ones that just because you had a good manager or leader last week doesn't mean the next one you're going to have will be the same caliber, just because you've not changed organizations or jobs.
That sounds a bit like herding cats. Actually,
think
possibly herding cats would be easier.
that's where the leadership thing comes in, is the leader or leaders, he or she or them, lay out a structure or an idea or a vision of how things should be done. And then without making things too prescriptive, say, we'll do it this way, but you can still have your own ideas, so that we don't, as you say, Leslie, end up herding cats or trying to catch chickens, and everybody goes their own way. There has to be some sort of idea, structure, and I know you don't like this, Angela, framework, not imposed upon people, but there for them to look at and say, yeah, okay, I get all that, and let's go that way. Because I've been in situations in my police service where you had different managers or different senior officers who had different ideas about doing things, and it became a wee bit chaotic.
Yeah. How do you do this? Do it this way. Oh, but he doesn't do it that way, or she doesn't do it that way. But that's the way I do it, and it works. But I was thinking about the framework situation and thinking about how much that we are now dealing with neurodiversity in the workplace, particularly now that we actually understand a little bit more of how we can lead, inspire, and help people who are neurodiverse stay in the workplace and enjoy it to the point where they feel valued, instead of just, oh, there's that kind of interesting one in the corner there, just give them that lot and they'll do it. There is that kind of idea that some people are still not diagnosed, but showing signs. And it's up to usually the managers to figure out what's going on, because nobody else wants to really take that on, do they?
I wonder though, do we need to have a diagnosis because someone works slightly differently? If you even just look at things like Myers-Briggs and the different personality types, different personality types work differently. Some love to dodge a deadline, and some love to get, the minute you give them the task, it's done that day. It depends on your personality. So I think, yes, we need to put the focus on neurodiversity where there's a diagnosis, but we also need to be quick. We need to not be quick to judge someone just because they do something slightly different to the way we do. If they've not got a diagnosis, we can't assume that they've got something. And I think it comes down to that genericness. It depends. We don't generically treat everybody with this label in this way because that worked for Joe, who was here before, and that's what worked for him. And I worry that there might be that risk of, here's some generic training that this is how you deal with a neurodiverse person, and this is going to fix it for everybody and work for everybody. We do need to work out how to make everybody in the workplace feel included, and that's was it DEI? It's now diversity, equality, and inclusion. So we do need to make sure that everybody feels valued and included, not just someone who's neurodivergent.
Yeah,
I think there's an interesting piece here, because we have, in the end of the day, when people are at work, there is fundamentally, there's a task focus. So how do we get the best out of people so that they have the least level of stress, the work is done efficiently, and it's done accurately. So it's efficient, effective. And I think if you're managing, you're going for there's one right way to do the task, follow the process. Whereas if you're leading, you're more inclined to say, okay, how do I still have the same task. How do I get the best out of this person? But equally, people also have to be capable of saying, this is the way I work best. And that's
feeling safe to
self-leadership
do so.
in essence. And feel safe enough to say, look, this is the way I work. I was working with somebody this week who actually is very clear. She knows she has various she's on various spectrums. But she's very clear on how she doesn't communicate it when she's hunting for a job, but she's very clear in letting be known, sometimes I really do need to work from home. When you want the important work done, just don't try to talk to me. It'll all get done.
I think that's really is part of it. And the pandemic kind of allowed that to happen more easily, in that people were working from home, and some of them really, really liked it, and some of them really, really didn't. So what we've got there is this kind of juxtaposition of, do we still give the choice? Do we still have the choice? Or are people trying to squeeze us, micromanage us into a place where we're going to be stressed out because we have all this pressure coming down on us from X, Y, and Z? Whereas if we're at home, as long as we know what the deadline is, when things need to be in and we have them in there, what's the problem?
I'm going to disagree.
Okay.
I'm going to challenge that. So I worked from home 2 days a week from 2012. The pandemic had nothing to do with it. Some of my colleagues loved working from home, some of my colleagues didn't. Some of my colleagues got more work done when they worked at home, some didn't. And actually, it's all down to the individual person. And saying, yes, we're going to micromanage you all to come back into the office. Some people don't want to work from home. Some people are in two bedroom flats, and there's mum, dad, and 2 kids living in a 2-bedroom flat. Where are they going to work from? So it doesn't always make sense to just say, oh, well, that person's going to work from home and we're going to get more done. That person might be sitting in a local coffee shop using a hotspot Wi-Fi because it's the only place they've got to have peace and quiet, which would be much more suitable sitting in the office. So I don't think we can generalize enough just to say, oh, well, what's the problem? There's no stress if you're working from home. You can actually have a lot more stress from working from home because you can be more isolated. You can feel as if you don't get the information that you need. So there's different parts.
I'm going to clap that challenge right back, because actually that was exactly what I was saying, that they have the choice. Instead of being micromanaged, they can have the choice.
Okay, so I apologize. I thought what you were saying was work from home, where's the problem? So
No. What I was saying was, for a micromanager, for someone who is like, they're going to be in the office, otherwise I don't know what's going on. Then, it's easier to kind of chill and allow the person to actually work to their optimum wherever they choose to be.
It's having that autonomy and that flexibility. And it's interesting you say that as well. I did have a micromanaging manager who was based in London, and I was based in the office in Stirling. And interestingly, he was upset that I worked from home 2 days a week. Not that he sat beside me anyway, and I said I had all the same tech, but for some reason his micromanagement didn't like the fact that I wasn't in the office with nobody else I worked with, because that made sense for him. So it's a really interesting.
Perhaps he was jealous of the fact that you were able to give yourself that option and he wasn't.
Oh no, he worked from home 2 days a week as well.
What's the problem then?
But you were junior to him, and therefore he wanted to have more control, or perceive himself to have control. You do as I say, not do as I do.
Oh, so it was a perk.
He might, but that might be something. Who knows? It's a few years ago. We'll. But I do think
it was as well known then as it is now.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, but I've one of the things that with the number of clients, I would be asking them, do you want to go for hybrid working, remote, or back in the office? And I had somebody the other week who was complaining that she really needs to focus when she's working. So I said, no, but so you're not looking for flexibility in your employer. You're actually looking for an inflexible employer who wants you in the office focused, because then you can tell your world, the family and extended other people, I have to be here. So therefore somebody else has to deal with the other stuff. And it was like a penny drop. Actually, I don't need a flexible employer at all. I actually need the opposite. But what she needed was that clarity about, this is where I work best. Not that if I'm in the office, or you can go home and mind your kids, or if the kids are sick, that actually, no, she didn't want to be at the end of the phone if the kid had a problem. She wanted to hand that over to somebody else so that when she was working, she was working. And that's it. I thought it was
Yes.
quite interesting. I suspect there's more than her. I don't think
Yeah.
she's isolated in that approach to the world.
I think in a strange way we've led ourselves up the path of boundaries and where they are, who they are, what they are. And that comes back again to self-awareness, because we have to be aware of what our boundaries are. And sometimes, like you're saying, we don't really know until someone points it out to us. What do you think, Willie?
I think in a more general sense, if you look at Maslow's pyramid of needs, one of these is certainty, structure, framework. People like to know what's happening. And going into the office, as was back in the day, you start at 9 o'clock on a Monday, you finish at 5 o'clock, so on and so forth. It was a routine that was reassuring. It was comfortable. You knew where you were. And then COVID arrives and no, you need to stay at home. Well, all that's gone down the toilet now. So there's no getting out of bed, going for your shower, jumping the train, going to work, saying hi to your friends, blah, blah, blah. All of that. So it became quite an upheaval. Then people started to think, well, okay, I can do this, right? And I no longer miss that certainty and framework. But I do think some people did take the piss and abused that opportunity, right? When you get down to the managerial side, I have micromanagers myself, want to know what you were doing every second of the day. In fact, my last security job, I was a senior security manager when they did a kind of time in motion thing, where they wanted you to every hour, you to report exactly what you were doing. And one day I put, I'm going to the toilet, right? I was really, really aggravated by that. So you don't want to go down that line. But as Mary, in fact, everyone said, why don't you let people play to their strengths? If they want the office, fine, within reason. If they want to stay at home, fine, as long as the job's getting done and everyone's as happy as can be, right? Less stress, less friction, whatever. The flip side to that, people say, is if you're not in that office environment, you don't have ideas sparking off each other. You don't have the round the water cooler conversations. Oh, let's do it that way. So you can miss that human interaction in a business sense and also in a personal sense. As Angela says, you might be stuck at home and you don't see anybody, apart from the Amazon delivery guy who's here all the time. So it's a balance. It depends. What works for some person won't work for another person. And from a managerial point of view, is the good managers will recognise that and say, well, Willie likes to work at home. He's doing a great job. Angela likes to go into the office because it suits her better. She likes the chat and the banter, whatever it is, right? Whatever. As long as you get that mixture right. But this managerial authoritarian thing, no, you will be in the office 5 times every week. But I work better at home, don't care. That's just stupidity.
Willie, you mentioned something there that I think is really quite important. You said, play to somebody's strengths. But I think we actually have to add in what works for somebody at one stage might be quite different. If it's a different project with a different types of stressors, they might need something different. It isn't carved in stone. If they love working from home and then they have a young child and their partner's on maternity leave and suddenly the house is busy, they might suddenly decide they need to be in the office, But so I think it is a movable feast, and I think this speaks to the certainty. It shifts as the tasks change, the environment changes, everything changes, where you want to be and who you want to lead. But that requires that you actually are engaging in that self-reflective practice that say, am I actually leading myself to deliver my best self in this scenario? And if I'm not, how do I change that and make it that I'm delivering to the best of my ability? And that I think I think that sense of the leading yourself and being self-reflective is a skill set that we actually need people to methodically start doing, to take time, every day. How have I done today? Have I done well today? What worked for me? What didn't? Even that we mightn't be calling it self-reflective practice, but the reality is it is self-reflective practice, because that could scare people sometimes. They think, oh no, I'm not doing that. What's it? No, You think about what works well for you. Think about it. Now, would you like to do more of that? And how would you make it happen? That they can connect to much quicker than saying, want you to engage in 15 minutes self-reflective practice at the end of the day. He will connect to the concrete much quicker than the abstract.
I was
I
just
think
thinking
another
there,
part of it, sorry,
sorry, Willie. I was
another
just thinking
part
of
of
a
it,
have-done list.
another part of it's trust. Right, where your manager trusts you to get the job done. So you're not sitting in your gym jams playing Space Invaders on the computer or whatever, right? And you trust the manager to support you. The manager trusts you to get the job done. Huge important thing, trust. Sometimes not at the top of the list when it comes to certain types of managers or leaders for that matter. You've heard that he was a leader of men and I would go with him anywhere because he took his soldiers over the top and all that kind of stuff. Fine. But the soldiers had to trust him before they got over the top, like they say in Blackadder, right? And the same with leaders and managers. If the staff don't trust them, they're probably not going to work to their best ability. And if the managers don't trust the workers, there won't be that kind of disconnect where it'll have a negative effect on the organisation, on productivity, on the culture, the whole bit. So I put forward that, yes, leadership, self-leadership, which brings me to the point of, do we trust our own selves? Do we trust ourselves to lead ourselves properly? Do we have self-doubt? Do we second-guess ourselves? So I've opened another can of worms here, so I'm going to shut up.
No, it's good, Willie, because basically you're quite right. We don't tend to trust ourselves because we've never been taught to do that. We've never been given maybe some people have in some places, but personally speaking, it was always a case of you will do this, you will sit there, you will be there, you will do that, and you will have this done by that time. And that is how life is, because it doesn't go the way you want it to, it goes the way it's going to go because we said so. And that does not bring a great idea of I can trust myself to do that or do another thing, because you don't get the experience of it. You don't get the experience unless you're like me and you're a little bit, yeah, I think I'll do something else. So, it got me into a lot of trouble, but at the same time, it was enjoyable while I was doing it. So I kept going on and doing it. And that, I think, is the thing. I found a path beyond where I was supposed to be going. My roadmap was done for me. And I think that happens still a lot. That people have this idea that their children or they themselves should be, as I should, Angela, should be actually at this stage in life by now. Why haven't they got this? Why haven't they got that? Where are they going? Or they should be there. Everybody else is doing it, but actually all they're doing is focusing on the people who are doing that kind of thing and have got that. They're not looking at themselves and saying, do I actually want that? Is that what I really, really, truly want to do? Or do I
It's
just
a bit
want to?
about trust your instincts or trust your
Yeah.
gut, whatever. Another thing that I always find as a young police officer, if a manager trusted me to do a job, there's a job I trust you to get it done. Did that make me feel better? Absolutely. Did I feel elevated, supported? Absolutely. Then you come back and say, it's done, boss. Good job, Willie. Well done, son. You go away, metaphorical pat in the back, and you feel great. So being trusted by someone else to do something is a great thing. But do we stop and think, do I trust myself enough to do that? And that can start all sorts of negative self-talk or whatever. But trusting others is great because without it, nothing gets done. But trusting yourself is a big thing. And I would
That
urge
also
people to
leads,
think about it.
it also leads to the ability to say, no, you're giving me too much to do. Somebody else can do that. Because when people do find their niche and they're in there and they're really good at what they do, and they have the inability to say no, because sometimes they feel that it might be their job at stake if they do, or nobody's going to like them anymore. Might respect them a bit more, but they're not going to like them. But that's one of those things as well, isn't it, Angela, that we need to learn how to say no.
It's back to whoever it was that mentioned boundaries earlier on. It's that concept of it's interesting. It's boundaries and priorities, isn't it? So you're given the tasks to do, and they fill the time, because we still work based on factory type settings, in the fact that we clock on, we clock off. And it doesn't matter how long it takes you to do a particular task, you're going to be there 9 to 5 or whatever the time period is for the job that you've taken on. We're still doing that time for money piece. But interestingly, what happened for a lot of people during the pandemic, and actually even before that when people were working from home. So my commute to work would be over an hour. So on the days I worked from home, I'd probably log in about half an hour early. And I'd maybe log off about half an hour later. And I might not really take a lunch because I maybe just popped into the kitchen and grabbed something out of the fridge or stuck something in the microwave, and I've just worked away and then I've just maybe eaten at my desk. So the boundaries and the gaps and the breaks are not there. And it is that point of if you keep getting more and more work put onto you and you're not in the office, so you're not noticing when everybody else is packing up and going home. There were nights I was finding myself 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, realised I was still on the computer, still in my living room at the time, and hadn't built a shed by then, still sitting at my desk working because I hadn't realised the time. Because stuff had to get done. And it is that piece exactly. If someone's going to keep putting work on you, what is the priority? Because it can't be all of it.
I think
Priority's got to be self, hasn't it? It's got to be being self-aware enough to actually say, I need time out, I need rest, I need repose, I need to sleep.
Help and support.
it could also be selfish and say no, because it's for your highest and best, right?
Yeah.
I did a piece with the young apprentices about work-life balance and time management and various other things. And the simple thing would be when your boss tells you do this piece of work, your simple reply, well, what of the other 3 pieces of work you've already given me do you want me to ignore? And 9 times out of 10, the manager will have forgotten they've given you that other piece of work. And you're very tactfully and respectfully reminding them, you've given me 3 jobs already. I can't do a 4th one. Which of these other ones do you want me to dump? Oh, sorry about that. Right, get your point, you carry on, and they'll take it somewhere else. But that's the ability to, I don't know, having the front to say, sorry, boss, no.
And especially the youngsters, it can be really difficult when you're new in the workplace. Everybody else on your team can be 10, 15 years older than you. They've got so much more experience than you, or at least you think they do. And you maybe don't have that bottle to go and say to somebody, there's no way I can do that as well as everything else on this list. And then you then get the managers that say, well, I thought you wanted more autonomy, so you choose yourself what's the important parts. So you then end up in that kind of catch-22 of like, damned if you do and damned if you don't.
And I think the other piece is if you're new, and I think it happens, a lot of people are new, they're trying to impress so that they get past their probation. And then they get landed with even more stuff and they don't know how to stop it. So they're swamped. I know, people, I think there's a wonderful expression that a guy who I was working with, we never expect machines to work at 100% of the time. We operate our machines at 80%. On the norm. Therefore, why would I expect any of my people to operate at anything other than 80% so that they have some capacity when the crisis hits?
Because if you look on the flip side of that, we have the saying, if you want something done, give it to a busy person.
And then that becomes a badge of honour. I'm busy.
Yeah,
how often do you hear people say, how are you doing? Oh, I'm really busy. And sometimes it's, oh, I'm really busy, it's great. Or, oh, so much to do, I'm really busy. It becomes this badge of honour, for want of a better way of putting it. I'm working, I'm a martyr because I've got all this stuff to do, and look at me, aren't I wonderful? And some people like to keep busy. I mean, when I was working full-time, I had umpteen things on the go. But that's because I got bored if I wasn't doing something. And it was my choice what that something was. And I chose it not to be just sitting in front of the TV night in, night out. It was doing other things. For some people, sitting in front of the TV is what they want to do. And that's still busy because you're not doing nothing.
You're meditating.
Certain industries where it's a luxury to have that choice.
Yes.
But a good manager, and even better, a good leader, will create an environment where that choice is available. Yeah, so you don't have to work till you're 9 o'clock at night. I think self-employment, as I now understand it, you kind of forget about, you clock off a particular time. As you say, Angela, 8:30 at night, you're sitting on the computer thinking, I didn't do this when I was working. Why am I doing it now? This is supposed to
Oh,
be
it was worse at 1:30 one night. I was saying, why am I still in the shed? It's all dark outside.
so having that choice is wonderful. And good managers and good leaders should be able to create an environment where they have that choice. I'm giving you that choice. It's like, if you give people that choice, number one, and you trust them to do what you've asked them to do, and that two-way bond is created, and so on and so forth, it's only going to benefit everyone. Managers, leaders, workers, staff, supervisors. You'll have less absenteeism, less stress, less staff turnover, greater productivity. People might be happier at work, have a laugh and a joke. Whereas the micromanagement, and you'll do as I do and you'll do as I tell you, I just find it incredible that still goes on in the world.
Or better yet, do as I say and not as I do.
But then we've got that because it's habitual and it's something that we recognize and we know. And these people are people who are the ones who are saying that are people who don't want to change. They're hanging on to that for grim death because there's a fear that they wouldn't know how to work it if they didn't work it that way. And that's something that perhaps we could address as well in situations when we're going into coaching, into work and places like that, looking at that and saying, how are you choosing to find that fearful? What is it that you're worried about that if you let go and you allow that to happen, oh, but everything's going to fall, the sky's going to fall. It's like chicken licking. The sky's going to fall. The sky's going to fall. Well, what if it doesn't?
Well, get back to the
And
old,
it probably won't.
we've always done it that way. And, how's that working out for you? That last security job I had, I was a fairly senior position. Could I suggest that perhaps a better way to do it with that? No, we've always done it that way. How's that working out? Well, we've got a staff turnover and people are leaving and everyone's pissed off and we've always done it that way. It was like trying to.
And then you ask them, so when did you start doing it that way? And it was 3 people ago that took the job on, and it was because they got a kickback from whatever company it was that produced the process, and it makes no sense anymore.
It was like trying to steer an oil tanker and expect to get to move within 200 yards. And that's probably one of the reasons that I didn't survive too long in that company.
Yeah, we do have to deal with momentum a lot when it comes down to these things. And there is this idea that, oh, well, it's been working for us for the last few years, but actually they're not only seeing that bit of the iceberg they want to look at. They're not seeing all the chaos and rupture that's going on underneath them. And obviously, the earth is moving and quaking and tearing apart and people are leaving the ship left and right. But some people are not noticing because they're only involved in their own little part. They're only interested in their own little part. And I think that's part of the leadership thing that we're talking about, is that if we can learn to lead ourselves, to be our own leader, then we can learn to steer ourselves in the right direction and understand how to help other people follow in our wake. And there's a good metaphor for you. But even if we do have that, oh, but nobody wants to do the, I don't want to talk to people anymore. Well, hasn't WhatsApp and other platforms such as become the water cooler? Every 5 minutes, all you have to look at it, everybody's making a group on WhatsApp. Oh, I met so-and-so and so-and-so down the pub. We're in a WhatsApp group. So, we still have the ability to make the communication work in so many more ways now than we used to. So perhaps what we're really wanting to do is be self-aware, is to actually take self-action on that awareness and start to begin to look at our priorities and our boundaries as far as it comes to our well-being. Because if we're not working well inside ourselves, we're not going to be working well for anybody else. And sometimes that's the crux of it. like you were saying, Willie, with the manager who wants to give just one more thing to this person. Maybe if that person said no and said, I can't do it because I've got to leave because I'm shattered, I'm burnt out, I'm done. Then what happens? Because nobody else can do that job because nobody ever got a chance to look at what he was working on or she was working on. So let's lead ourselves up that garden path at one point, and we'll leave it there and see if you can discover what it is that your boundaries and your priorities are, and how, when it gets to the crux and that iceberg's starting to shatter things, you can find somebody to help you. Maybe one of us.